Hi, everybody. This is Sinead. I'm based here in Dublin. I'm part of the Dublin swing community. And we're here to talk a little bit about the connection between learning to dance, any type of dance, and language learning. So I'm just going to wait for Dóri to join in. So whenever she does, we'll start the video. So let's see. Hopefully everybody can see. Okay, great. Let me see. I'm on my phone, so this is quite complicated. Hola, Pepe. I can see Pepe's here. Fantastic. Great. Okay. Just waiting. Okay. Okay, so Dóri should be here in a few minutes. She said she's online, so let me see. I'm new to the whole Instagram live, so forgive me. It's the first time I use this. Okay. Okay, Muriel is here as well. Fantastic. Okay, so let me see. Okay, well, while I wait for Dóri, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Sinead, as I said. I'm based in Dublin in Ireland. I have been a language teacher of English, French and Spanish since 1999. Yeah, 20 years. So I think I know language learning quite well. And I've been a Lindy Hopper since 2016. I actually started with the Cape Town family. So I'm really, really happy to be here and be able to join this fundraising. Okay, so I can see Dóri is joining us. Okay. Dóri. Let me see, she's going to come up now. Hello! How are you?
Arrived. Good, and you?
We're live on Instagram Live, first time.
Hi,
well, actually
everybody.
Second time, because we gave it a try this morning. How are you doing, Dóri? Fantastic. Well, so Dóri, you're based in Barcelona? Is your connection okay?
So, yeah, at the moment, yes.
Yeah.
If now, I think you'll notice it.
Yeah, well, we don't know because
what have you been thinking about so far?
It's impossible to know. Okay, so Dóri, thanks so much for humoring my crazy idea, this connection between language and dance that I constantly think about, and I have been since I started the whole Lindy Hop swing process. So you're also a language teacher. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay, so I have been teaching for some years as well, English to all different age groups. And I have been dancing something on and off, different things, but I have been dancing swing and especially solo in the past 6-7 years. Honestly, like the idea of comparing language learning and dancing, I really found it very intriguing and exciting because eventually there's not much of a difference between the two. And so thank you for having invited me to this talk.
Yeah, we've actually had quite a bit of fun planning this and talking about it, and I think we even spent hours talking about our experiences and how they've affected both our language learning and our dancing. So we've kind of we put it into a bit of a concise kind of a few points to talk about. Did you start dancing in Barcelona? Can you tell me just because I know about your dancing?
Yes. A long time ago, someone showed me a YouTube video of people dancing Lindy Hop, and I have always been considered as the crazy in every group. So that was not surprising that they have actually associated me with this dance. And when I moved to Barcelona, at the beginning, I didn't have the financial situation to start dancing, but then I went into it. Lindy Hop was a little bit stressful for me because there was a leader and I had to depend on the other person. So a little bit, this is why I started dancing solo, but then eventually you find out that no matter what you dance, it's kind of the same principles need to be there. And I think this is true for language learning. And I'm really lucky because in the past few years, I have also had the opportunity to teach dancing. So it's kind of like, this is how I get a little bit of experience from the teaching dancing and then also from the language, which is my job.
Well, actually, I think I took one of the best ever classes with you guys. Certainly, like the whole weekend of solo dance with you guys was really, really good. It was really inspiring. Yeah, and it kind of teaches you quite a lot about yourself. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful down with Solology in Cordova, at a jazz festival down there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we broke it, as I said, we have to compliment each other because we're online. Yeah, we started with looking at the first point. I've actually made little signs. There you go. Can you read that?
My connection is really bad now. I try to figure it out. Just go on.
Of language and dance. Yeah, so that was the first thing that we really connected about, and we spoke about quite a bit. I think we probably spent about an hour just talking about this.
Yes.
So yeah, tell me what you think.
I think it's interesting because I think there are, if we think back of history of humanity, to use super big words, there aren't so many things that we have done, we did in all of the different phases of history. It's basically we killed each other all the time. We had sex for different reasons. We ate a lot and we danced. We have been dancing. The animals are dancing too. So it's something that you can find everywhere. And then language is basically just another kind of communication. So this is, I feel that these are two very basic activities that describe us as species, because if we think of the other species as well, they dance, they communicate, they have a language. So it's something very universal.
And it does look different everywhere, but there are so many commonalities, aren't there?
Indeed.
Yeah, I think about when I travel and I see different dances, I say, well, this looks, tango, that looks quite a bit like, flamenco a little bit, kind of in the posture. And then you think, well, salsa, bachata, all of those dances, they're all influenced by each other. Yeah, and that's the exact same way with language. You speak Spanish, and there are all these beautiful Arabic words that were adapted to Spanish. Here the English that we speak here in Ireland is so influenced by the Gaelic language, by the Irish language. So it's something that you see quite a bit in both language and dance, and they're both forms of communications. Yeah,
and if you think about it, I also think that both in languages and in dancing, you have these approaches that try to preserve the dance or the language as it used to be, but then also you cannot disconnect it from the time when it is danced or the time when it is spoken. So it's something that is always in change, and there are always new influences. Even if you think about it, since the 1930s, 40s of the swing, we have had hip-hop, UK jazz, breakdancing, and so many other dances that have evolved out of this. And there's no what is better. Is Old English better than the English we speak now? Yeah. There is no value judgment.
Yeah, I love that conversation.
It's just a different form.
It's a conversation I've had so much about language, about what is considered correct language and how we use it. And people have said, but language evolves. Why don't we use this form of language? Because that's the way people speak. You know, why do we have this rule book that has to be a certain way? And that's the same with dance. People can be really old school with dance, or they can be really modern. And it's very hard to get that balance as well.
No, I guess this is something that can take us to the next point on our little list. Because yes, indeed, I'll wait for your lovely.
I'm doing a PhD, so this is what I did all day.
Very nice.
Vocabulary, structures, patterns, and musicality.
Indeed, indeed. So if we think about it in dancing, when you sign up for a Lindy Hop class or you sign up for a solo class, usually they don't start by saying dance. Mm-hmm. No, they give you something, because otherwise, without these help, you will not be able to start. And this would be vocabulary. In solo dancing, we could think of fall off the log or a box step, and these would be the vocabulary that is the base. And in languages, more or less, you start the same way.
Yeah, it's funny because really vocabulary alone without connecting structures and having musicality, because it's really in language, it's also musicality. Those alone don't really work. You know, you can be, I remember I once got a student into an intermediate class, and when you teach English in Ireland, you're going to get students from all over the world. And they'll have different experiences of learning English. So some of them will spend 6 years in school learning a language, and they will know the weirdest, most complex parts of the language, but they won't be able to answer, hello, how are you? And I just remember this student in and going to the principal or the director of studies and saying, but this student doesn't speak English. How is he in an intermediate class? And she said to me, but he got 100% in his test. So when we spoke to him, we couldn't put him, you know, we couldn't put him in beginners, but we couldn't put him in an advanced class, because he just wasn't, you know, advanced enough. He just didn't have the vocabulary to speak, to connect. Yeah. And so
in dancing, sorry.
Yeah, and so they put him somewhere in the intermediate, but really he didn't have the musicality. He didn't have that connection to other people that comes with learning to speak a language. Yeah, and I think those parallel dancing quite a bit.
Yeah, you can know a lot of steps and how they work, but also if you have mentioned musicality in the language, then if you don't know the eights, if you don't recognize a phrase, then after a while it becomes harder to evolve, or it becomes harder to improve. Because I feel that this is true for languages and for dancing as well, that the more you know that you know very little. So that there is always something you haven't mastered yet. There is always a new idea or a new aspect that you can work on. And there's another thing that I find very interesting, both in languages and in dancing, that sometimes people think that studying the structure, learning vocabulary is something very rigid, and it closes you into a box. And then they are looking for these fantastic moments of inspiration and letting it go and going totally crazy. And you can find both of these moments in language learning and in speaking and in dancing as well. And I feel that sometimes people think that these two approaches, they would take you to different places. And I come from a point where I was always the one who gets totally crazy and has no idea what has happened, and I'm not able to reproduce what I've just done.
Yeah.
But these two approaches, they take you to the same place. Because the more control you have over the basics, the bouncing, the steps, the vocabulary, how to follow one step after another, the 4/8s, the blues chorus, the swing chorus, that enables you and opens the possibility of going crazy, but then coming back. And I think it's the same in languages. A lot of people, they have this experience of having had 3 beers, and then I already speak any language fluently.
I think we've all had that experience, to be honest, Dóri. And it's muscle memory, you know, because at the end of the day, you have that muscle memory that comes from practicing something a lot and dancing it a lot in a social, whether it's partnered or solo. And it's the same when you're practicing languages. You know, if you hear something a lot, you listen to the radio, you're talking with friends, and you hear them say this, then eventually it's going to come out. And I've been in situations where I've thought, how did I learn that word? How do I know this word? And I must have learned it there. It's there. I don't remember the moment I read it in a book. I must have learned it from somebody else. I'm laughing because our friend said, Antonia, we have a bit of a private joke there. Hello.
Oh yeah. So it's interesting because it's all about exposure. So, and I'm really not very good at this. Well, I know a lot of people who are, so I know it works. It's the more you listen to music, the more you pick up. I have that in my, I teach dancing solo in community centers for older ladies, and I really like them. And then sometimes they just say, but how do you know that this is the 8? How do you know that this is finished? And I always tell them that I was not born like this. So even though dancing and language is universal, we are not born doing it. So you have to practice.
Yeah.
And that's the part when it can get very, very boring. But there is no other way to do it. The more you do it, the better it gets. It's a skill. It's a skill. And so I think practice is a very important part.
Yeah, and I think you also have to embrace your strengths, and you know, you work on your weaknesses, but your weaknesses are not necessarily, you know, as weak as you believe them to be. You know, in languages, people sometimes are really worried about their accents, you know, when they're speaking other language. I always say to students that it's more important to get the emphasis right than to get the accent, because the emphasis is how you communicate. And I think that that's really the same in language, or in dance, I mean, that there are certain, you know, you have your certain parts of the song that you really need to hit. And if you don't hit those parts of the song, then that's when you're completely lost and it's a chaotic experience and you're not kind of really following.
It gives you the feeling that something is not quite right. So when you see people doing swing outs and it's just not there, not when it's supposed to be, and this kind of feeling is something that we would kind of like suppose like, oh, it's gonna come, but it is coming because you make it happen. And the
so bounce. I think the bounce is like the kind of the underlying accent of the dance, you know, in swing or, you know, different dances have different underlying kind of foundations. But I think without that, it's hard to identify what you're trying to do. And I see that parallel with language quite a bit. So yeah, I'm looking at my notes
and
here.
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
What you have said that like and also everybody is different. So they are going to understand differently a certain aspect or a certain task, and they are going to have different difficulties and different tasks that are going to be super easy. So sometimes you feel like this comes naturally.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that word. It doesn't come naturally. You just have been doing it longer than the other stuff.
Do you know, that's interesting though. I want to take you up on that point, because in language learning, some people are just quite natural. They're very well extroverted to start with, and when you're extroverted, whether you're learning language or dance, you're going to get a hell of a lot more practice than an introverted person. You know, it's terrifying. Both learning a new language and dancing are terrifying experiences. But when you're extroverted, or at least on the surface, it gives you plenty more practice. but it also gives you a complacency, which means that sometimes you don't feel that you need to work on some aspects. And I've had intermediate classes in language learning where I have these fluent students who aren't getting one verb right, but you understand what they're they're speaking in the present tense, and you understand what they're saying, and they're able to communicate. And you think, well, it depends what they're looking for here. But at the same time, there's also sometimes that stubborn side where people are, well, people understand me. Why would I work on this? And I think
yes,
it happens as well. Some people can be very naturally musical, and they can be quite good at going with the flow of the music. And sometimes it gives that impression that maybe there isn't the need to work on certain steps or work as hard as other students, whereas
I guess it also depends on what you would like to achieve. Because now this reminds me of a friend of mine, and I remember that we had this conversation several times before, that sometimes it's so annoying that you spend hours and hours practicing a really cool rhythm, and it's really there. And then actually when people see you dancing, the time when you get the biggest cheers is when you move a little tit or you do something with your ass.
Yeah.
And I guess this would be the same in language learning, but then you also, you have to consider that whose approval are you looking for? If it's the masses, of course, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it.
Yeah.
Because people usually stay with the energy, they stay with the atmosphere that you show. But then there are people, and there are a lot of people like that in the dancing community, who do know what you are doing. They know what rhythm that was. Actually, that rhythm is the rhythm that happened 2/8 before in the music, and it was the drums. So there is a very sophisticated community there as well, who do appreciate these kind of elaborate details.
Every time you speak, I just think in terms of language, because that's my area of experience. And I just think, when a Spanish or an Italian or a French speaker says a very complex word in English, and people really say, wow, this person's English is great. But actually the hard bits are the phrasal verbs. The hard bits are the little words. Nobody understands this unless they are teachers or they've learned other languages. That there's this idea that the long Latin words they're going to know because it's the same in Italian or the same in French. Sometimes what seems complex to the outside world is actually not as difficult as we know it is, and vice versa.
Yes. Indeed. But I guess it also comes with the more you practice, it's in language as well, that you listen better, and in dancing is you see better. So you are going to pick up those bits and pieces in the performance of another dancer. Because you train yourself, so you know how it works in your body, and then you can recognize those patterns, and you can recognize those sequences or rhythms, because you have been working on it as well. And then this also, so when you go to a language school, it's the same. It's not just that I sit there and I learn a lot of tenses, but I also learn to understand. And I think this would take us to our next point.
Yeah, actually, before that, I just want to talk about the idea of plateauing and perfectionism. I think that in the learning process, people always plateau, as in there's always, you learn a huge amount at the very beginning, and then eventually you're going to get to a point where you feel that you're not learning anymore. Or even that you're unlearning what you learned before. Did that ever happen to you, either in dancing or language?
No, I think it's I imagine learning as a spiral. So no matter what level you are on, and I also feel with languages and with dancing is that the more you do, the harder it becomes, in a way that what I have mentioned before, that the more I know that I don't know that much. So I always find something new that I can work on. And of course, if you imagine the whole learning experience in dancing and language as a spiral, you are not on one level and then moving on that line over here or over there, but then you, like in a video game, you go to the next. So your challenges or your difficulties, they're going to change, they're going to be different. So, and eventually when you master something, that gives you a great satisfaction that finally I've been practicing this rhythm for such a long time and now I have it. But then comes the next part. Where can I use it? Let's use it in a place where it's not so easy.
Yeah.
Or let's modify it in a way that is not natural for my body, and then challenging it again and again and doing something else. So, and yes, in this way, you also have to look at what your objective is. Because if you just want to enjoy, that's fine. Like, I have that nowadays, that I just like, oh no, I don't want to do this rhythm. I don't even know how it works. But then if you go out dancing, then don't complain that you are the worst. Because now you feel that you don't want to do difficult stuff. You don't want to learn something new, and that's fine too. So, and I think these kind of difficult moments, we have them in language learning as well. So sometimes you just have to be patient with yourself.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Kind of
you learn from your mistakes as well. You know, every time in language learning, especially, I was teaching a student Spanish the other day, and I said, actually it was yesterday, and she's Chinese and she's got a Spanish boyfriend, and I said to her, you know, learn that the word embarazada doesn't mean embarrassed, it means pregnant.
I'm so embarrassed.
I said, you'll probably remember that if you ever make that mistake. Because you'll make, you know, when you make this kind of mistake, you'll never make it again. Because and it just teaches you more rather than you know, stopping your learning process. Yeah.
And I think in dancing, going back to mistakes, I think what happens is that, or at least in my interpretation of a mistake, that there is no mistake. It's what you do with it.
Yeah.
So maybe a lot of people compete, and it can happen that you did a prelim and it was horrible, but don't be so hard on yourself, because you might find something that actually was good, or it gives you the opportunity to find something to work on. So you can say that, I didn't like the way I connected with the leader, or oof, there I was sure on that break. It just looks like as if, but it's not. So then this gives you the opportunity to make your little list for the next training session,
we're losing you
for the next time.
Sorry, Dóri, we're losing you a tiny bit there with your connection, so hopefully they'll just be temporary. But I have a comment from somebody, a tap dancing teacher in Dublin, who says that she quite likes the spiral imagery for learning. So thanks for that comment. Okay. Well, we go to you were saying that you tried to segue into our next point, and then I stopped you because I wanted to talk about the plateau. So our next comment is, or our next topic is exploring different dialogues. Yeah, I was told to do it quite slowly because I was a bit fast. The dialogue. How do you feel about the dialogue?
Because I guess like we learn, like, as I have told you before, since when I started dancing, and I started dancing Lindy Hop, and I have to tell you that at the beginning I was a little bit like an opossum. Basically every time something happened, I didn't know what is happening, I just died and froze, which must have been very scary for my leaders.
Sorry, I have a comment from Muriel that says, different dialogues. Yeah, exploring different dialogues is our next one. Yeah. So the dialogue. Tell us about the dialogue.
And and then for me it was very difficult to dance a partner dance because it freaked me out big time. But then eventually you also realize that, and this is why I went into solo dancing more, but eventually working together with Solology, we have discovered that solo dancing is a partner dancing as well. And because when you start dancing, okay, you can do it at home, but you want to do it with somebody else.
Yeah.
Be by holding hands or just looking at each other and sharing a song.
Mm-hmm.
So the objective is not only learning dancing or learning a language alone, but we need to invite another person into this experience. Yeah. And it opens up a very interesting world, because when you step out of your room, this is the moment when you are going to be very, very exposed.
Oh, absolutely.
And
actually, there was.
I do remember.
Sorry, there was another Barcelona-based dancer who was helping me with the research for this, and she said, every dance is a short conversation, but the first few dances and conversation are as terrifying. And I think it's true, particularly if you're completely new to something. But that's what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the interesting thing that sometimes you don't know why is it so scary. Is it because there is another person, or is it because you are there? So it's a multiple layer of scariness in that moment of going out there. And also because I think it's the moment when you will have feedback,
mm-hmm.
which is essential to learning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's not so nice when somebody doesn't like your dancing, for example, or they make a comment that you might not like.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, it's like the mistakes. So this comes with the territory. So if you go out dancing.
Yeah, actually, we have a comment here from Pepe in Colombia, in Bogota, and he says social aspect. But actually, there's something that you said to me, Pepe, which I thought was really beautiful, which you've never had a bad dance because you always learn something from the other person. And it really stuck with me, that comment. And I think it's the same with language. You know, you can have a bad experience in a conversation, but it's always going to teach you something about you. You know, whether you don't like something somebody said, or whether you're uncomfortable with the vocabulary that was used or the vocabulary that you have, or whether you don't connect. Sometimes people just don't connect. And it's not necessarily, you know,
that's okay.
Yeah, and the vast majority of language is body language. You know, 70% is body language. So, so while we, you know, when we enter into conversations, it's okay not to be, you know, to be loved by everybody, or it's okay not to love everybody you speak to. So I think that's something that could be transferred from language into dance.
And also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, if we go back to the base, what we have already talked about, the bass, the aids, the rhythm, the vocabulary. Basically, it's a lot of times I feel that people, they say that, I don't want to dance on the dance floor until I know a lot, no? Or I don't want to dance because I only know 2 steps. But that takes us back a little bit to this, something is natural, something is not, you have to work on it, you are in the flow or something like this. But no matter how little you have, it's always a lot to share. Because in the end, the idea of dialoguing, the idea of talking to someone using your body or using the language, it's because you would like to get to know this person. You would like to share a dance with them. And this is something that is very interesting. And there again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to advertise them, but this is something we have worked on with Soulology, that when you realize that when you dance with somebody, the focus might not be on what you say, but it's what you listen to, what you see.
Exactly.
And I think in languages it's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's the thing. It's something about adapting to the person you're speaking to, you know, and I think that that's something you can learn from language and apply it to dance. Or if you're a very good communicator on the dance floor, it's something you can take from dancing and apply to language as well. Because you listen to people and you listen to what they know and how they adapt to you, and you adapt to them. And you know, the typical problem that you have of the maybe elderly person who sees that somebody is foreign, and instead of changing the words, they raise their voice. I've always, I don't want to point to anybody out there, but it's something that I've always thought of when you're on the dance floor and you don't understand your lead or your follow, and they just kind of, particularly, you know, if it's a lead, they might yoink you and try and like push you in a direction that you didn't understand. So, you know, really they should have adapted to your knowledge and to what you know, and a lot of people do it incredibly well. You know, it's not so if you are very good at doing that on the dance floor, it's something that you can kind of apply to languages and adapting your conversation to somebody who is maybe, you know, just learning the language. I also think it's interesting in terms of your perceptions of people when they don't dance very well, or they don't speak very well, because there's kind of like this dumbing down of a person because they're a beginner, and you know, and not being able to kind of explore the fact that you know, we're complex individuals, and everybody has a lot to offer. And I sometimes notice my students years down the line, and they're like, "Hi, Sinead, how are you?" And we have these long conversations, and I'm like, "Wow, your English is so good. You're so interesting." So it's really finding that middle ground. Mm-hmm.
I think this is also when you think about it, that if you are dancing because you like to share this experience with other people, then you have to be responsible. So, and you have to be, what you have said, you have to adapt as well. So if I remember when I started dancing Lindy Hop, and then our teachers, they always ask, did you go to jams? Oh yes, we did. What did you do? Nothing. What did you do when somebody asked you for a dance? Oh, I told them that I'm just a beginner. And they were like, no, no, no. Don't tell them in advance who you are. First of all,
they'll realize.
Trust people a little bit, and also just because you are a beginner, and we all were beginners at some point. So I think this is another important point, that if we want to share the love of dancing, for example, that you cannot be exclusive, because then in the end you want other people to join in. You want other people to feel what you feel, even though we all have different ideas about dancing as well. But then it's your responsibility as well. So if somebody asks you for a dance and they are they haven't been dancing as long as you have, and then you note it, but then you make a decision. What is the aim of this dance? Do I want to have fun? Then let's have fun.
Yeah.
Not to intimidate the other person.
Yeah, and I think that we had this conversation about, you know, because consent is so important on the dance floor, and it's so important for people, individuals, to be able to you know, dance with the people that they want to dance, and if they feel uncomfortable, not have to dance with people that they feel uncomfortable with. But I do think that there is a community-wide, kind of a scene-wide responsibility to ensure that there's inclusivity within a dance floor. And it just reminds me of when we had a Spanish-speaking conversation group in Cape Town. Love Cape Town. And I was telling you about this, you know, we had this problem that we hadn't really named the group well, so people would turn up and they expected us to teach them Spanish, you know, to teach them really basic Spanish. And it was very hard for us to adapt the group in a way that we want people to join, and we're excited about new speakers so we can teach them stuff, but we don't want to be in a situation where, you know, people don't know very, very basic words and they get lost, and we end up in this massive conversation and they're in the corner feeling bad about their lives. And I feel that and we did come up with a solution, which was we emailed people when they joined the group, and we said, you know, we asked them general questions about their level of language. It was, you know, the first question was like, can you order beers in a bar? That's a 1. Or can you have, you know, win an argument against your Latino mother-in-law? That's a 10. And then according to where you were in the middle, then we would say if you were at the very start of that 1 to 10 group, then we would say, listen, you know, you're more than welcome to join. You might get a little bit lost. Let us know if you get lost, or we'll assign somebody to you to help you with this process, etc. Yeah, and I think that worked quite well in people not being excluded from that language group. Yeah, and I think that's something like that can be useful on the dance floor, you know, where you're, and you mentioned in Barcelona you have beginner dances, and
I do know that in several schools they have like beginners night, or maybe at the beginning of the party they would dedicate an hour or 2 to beginners, and then it's open to everybody, which is, I think it's really good, because then people know that, okay, this is kind of like a safe place.
mm-hmm.
But also what you have said, that on a community level, if nobody else but the beginners go to a beginner party, then there again it's difficult to be pushed out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And this is why, for example, I really love that in Barcelona you have a lot of different concerts, events, not at the moment, where you can go to, and then everybody mixes. So you have these dedicated parties to certain dances. No, Shakti party, everybody can go and practice and dance Shag. And you have the beginners night, and for example, this kind of differences in level. Before the lockdown, I had a very, very nice experience that there was a solo night organized, and there were a lot of people with very different levels. There were tap dancers as well. There was a guy dancing break dance, but people were really listening to each other. So when you saw that somebody is like always at the, like on the side, and then you went over and then you just picked up her Taki Annie or whatever they were dancing, and then they were receptive, so they were happy about you being there, but also because you had to make this effort, and not that you have to dummy down your dancing. It's not about that. It's about joining something that both of you can share.
Yeah.
And there again, it creates a very, very nice atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I want to kind of, a disclaimer I want to give is the fact that as an individual, I remember I went to a language exchange back in, I think it was in Colombia, and I wasn't really thinking about practicing languages. I was really just thinking about making friends. But I was the only native English speaker, so people kind of jumped on me and they all wanted to talk to me and they all wanted kind of a little bit of my time. And I think that was it was a bit difficult, you know, to have all of this weight and this pressure on you, when really that's not, you know, I wasn't really there to speak English or to teach English. I was there to connect with people. And so that's why I think it has to be a group responsibility to ensure that people are inclusive and that they have, you know, that they have the support of everybody, and so that like incredibly good dancers or speakers or don't have that responsibility, or organizers, you know. So I think it definitely is a group. It's a group decision. Yeah.
And also, yep.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
yeah. No, but it's I do feel the group thing, but I also think that, and I would go back to what we have mentioned about the mistakes and the difficulties and what comes naturally, what comes not, that it's also really good if you have a little bit of self-awareness. So that when so what do you want out of a dance? Of course, probably if I would just walk up to Remy and dance a little bit of solo with him, probably I could end up humiliated pretty much. But I can change my attitude, and I can just and I can just focus on, okay, I really wanted this experience, so just don't complain about what's happening now and do it. So, or you know that what can you do? And of course, you always look at people, you try to steal moves, but if you are not able to do what they are doing, this doesn't mean that you cannot join the conversation. So I think it's kind of like a very nice, and I did the spiral like this, now I would do it like this. I'm not like Shongoku. That this goes like this as well, together with the personal awareness and the personal responsibility you have for your dancing.
I think we're losing you a little bit. It might be your connection. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm the other one losing you there, but it might be your connection. No? Yeah, I can't hear you anymore, Dóri. Can people hear her? Can you put in the comments if you can hear me, you can hear Dóri? Oh, she's left. Yeah, so she probably had a connection issue. Just while Dóri goes and finds her connection, I was actually looking okay, yeah, no, she's just left for a second. I think it's maybe her her connection. I was looking today at a conversation. Dóri, I know we miss her. I was looking today at a conversation about backleading. Somebody was saying, you know, is backleading okay, or is it ever an issue? And I was thinking about, in terms of the dialogue, I mean, backleading for me, if I think of it in terms of a conversation, I sometimes think of it in terms of like interrupting, yeah? Even though suggesting a move or having a follower experimentation sounds more like something that you would have in terms of kind of, I have an idea, or have kind of make the conversation flow in another direction, because it is a dialogue, it is a conversation. So I was thinking in terms of that really harsh word, which is backleading, and it made me think in terms of language, like interrupting somebody, you know, or, you know, deciding you want to go somewhere when some people, somebody else wants to do something else, yeah, as opposed to having kind of that to and fro dialogue. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, you can put in the comments. I don't know what's going to happen to Dóri. Is she ever going to come back to us? Hopefully she will. Okay, I'm just going to go to the next one, and I'm going to wait to see if Dóri comes back. And the next one that we thought about was communication and context, yeah? So understanding communication and context. And I've traveled around different parts And I've seen the way every different dance scene is just a little bit different. I prefer to talk about dancing and creating together. I like that, Jude. Oh, is she coming? She's coming back. Let me see. View. Is she coming back? Come back. We miss you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Now it's all fixed. I hope it's gonna be good now. What did I miss?
Okay, I think in like the Wi-Fi across the world has been used so much. I can imagine that probably all day you've been working. Jude has a really good comment here, which is talking about dancing and creating together. I was having a bit of a monologue about backleading and this idea of you know, it is a dialogue, and the word backleading itself sounds like it's limiting. Yeah, it sounds like it's interrupting, as opposed to having that really nice conversation. So Jude says backleading sounds limiting and working against each other. Exactly. I think that's a really good point. Yeah. What do you think about that? Well, you're a solo dancer, so you know, what's your experience really in terms of kind of people leading the dance somewhere else?
I think but I have a little bit this experience with, and I'm not a very experienced Lindy Hop dancer, but this is what is nice about a dialogue, that you always have a choice how you react, and your reaction has an effect. So if you are dancing with someone, first of all, you have a choice who you want to dance with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not talking about now this is a beginner, I don't want to, but what you have said before, if you have danced a song with somebody and you see that they are not listening to you, or they are not replying to you, and this is something that I am stealing from solology again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a call and response.
Yeah.
We are not there on the dance floor. Yes, you can be there on the dance floor to show what you have.
Mm-hmm.
This is called a competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I had segued into the next point, which was understanding communication and context. I won't put the sign up because it's the wrong way. Sorry, Muriel. But I spent all day making those signs. Yeah, so the context, I think, is important. So what are your views on, you mentioned competitions, on the context of dancing and language learning?
So I would just go back to the very little dot where we started this conversation, and then we started to extend basically how we understand or what we understand about the connection between languages and dancing. That we started from the vocabulary, then we went on to dialogue with someone, but then basically the whole objective of learning a language and dancing is to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And I even would go back a little bit to this universality of dancing, that I'm not an expert, so now I'm just throwing some things into in here, because I'm really not like a historian about this. But the Hallelujah has the movement of working on the field, or when in the prehistoric times, or even in tribal dances, every single movement has a meaning. And of course, if I don't know, I am doing this in the big apple, it's not that I'm looking for a horse I can kill and eat it. But even now, when I want to dance with somebody, it's because I want to say something.
Yeah.
And because and then there again, to bring in the same idea, it's to communicate.
Uh-huh.
And communication is not a one-way phone call.
Yeah.
It's something that I give and something that I take. And I have to be respectful to this whole situation.
Uh-huh.
So this is what I think that, and it's also probably it's the same a little bit in language learning, that you have to look around. Where am I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I in the prelims of a competition?
And
sorry, go ahead. I got carried away.
Just because everything you're saying is so inspiring, and I think everybody agrees. But that's why I want to give my 2 cents. In language learning, it's fascinating because you know, I think of it in terms of what am I preparing somebody to do? Am I preparing them to go on holidays and have kind of a basic conversation with the neighbor in their Spanish villa, or am I preparing them to do an exam, a complex exam for a university entrance? And I'm going to prepare their classes or gear their classes in a very different way according to what they want out of it. Now, obviously, probably most dance teachers will empathize, and a lot of language teachers too, is the fact that you have a mix of people with different goals in different classes. And it, you know, especially because in Lindy Hop and swing and solo jazz, you see so many inspiring videos and so many incredible people, and you're, oh God, that's going to be me in 2 years. I never thought that, by the way, but some people do. And they really, they want it so badly, and they're quite frustrated. And I get that from students. You know, they might come in and they might say, you know, I want to do the whatever English language exam in 6 months or a year, and I'm like, well, we have a lot of work to do here, you know.
Yeah.
But also there is that context of why is a person doing this, you know, because at the end of the day, it's communication, and it's for fun.
Indeed, but I think it's also, we can go back to a little bit of the person, like being aware of what you want out of dancing as well, or which also changes a lot of times. And I think, like, there again, we can be like super philosophical about this, but life is like that, let's face it. Like, one day you want something, the second day you don't want it, and then you want it again, or you have more time, and then, but I would go back a little bit to this, like, look around where you are, because of course, if you are, I don't know, it happens to me a lot, and good Lord, I'm sure they are all having a hiccup now because I'm talking about them so much, but this is the experience I have.
They're wonderful.
When you work,
I know what you're about to say, and they're wonderful.
When you work together with the group, it pushes you. So it's like, even if you don't want to, you learn something new. But then also what is beautiful about working together is that when you can say, no, I'm not into this now, or I'm tired, or I want to focus on something else in my life. And if you have that kind of community, they will support you in that as well. So they will respect that, okay, you only know the present perfect. We're going to talk to you like that. And then maybe after a time, you will be like, no, I would like to know the present perfect progressive as well, or show me the rhythm again. And I think this is a very nice connection. And I would go back to social dancing again. When you are social dancing, or at least this is how I understand it, a social event is for socialize. And it's the same for dancing as well. So I look around, and of course, it's my choice. What do I want to do there? Do I want everybody to look at me? But also I would say I can go into a jam circle wanting other people to look at me with different attitudes. I can go there and be a show-off, saying like, that's me, I hope you can all see how fantastic I am. Or I can be more, what's the word? Now I don't know it in any languages.
Humble, maybe.
Yes, thank you. But I can be humble. And I can be standing in the middle of a jam circle, and people will feel it, that I'm there to share something with them, or invite them to join me, or to be the next one, because they feel that it's okay. I can do this as well. And I think that's very important, because this is what creates the community. So, and we start with the base and with the vocabulary. But now we have gone through a dialogue, we have gone into a social context, and this is what makes the whole thing beautiful.
Just to let you know, Dóri, we have less than 5 minutes, I think, till it ends. But I think that's a really good point, which I think, and it's the same in languages, that you're not going to use your most complex vocabulary just having an ordinary dance, and it's you know, you're always going to, once again, adapt to the people around you. So our final thing, which we're going to finish up on, is self-reflection and learning. This is for this Facebook video, which will be inverted. What are your final thoughts? You have 20 seconds.
Oh, this is so stressful. So, yeah, I would say that if you know why you are there and what you are doing, it is going to help you to connect. And it's going to help you to listen better to the other people, and that will give you a lot.
Oh. Okay, so we just got cut off there. And Dóri, I don't know if Dóri's going to come back. Hopefully she'll be able to come back. But it's just to finish off. Hello, Pepe. It's just to close off our argument, and just a couple of things that we wrote down before. So I'm just going to read it out while, in case Dóri comes back, and we'll just add it to our story afterwards. Yeah. So we wrote down understanding yourself and your own journey. Yeah. So what it teaches you about yourself, which I think is important for both language learning and dancing. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to the person that you used to be. So I think that that's really useful advice, and I think one of my teachers told me that years ago, and I liked it a lot. And practice, break it down, adapt your learning to your own needs, and those are all things that I think can be useful for both language learning and dancing. So I don't know if Dóri's going to come back, and I don't want to take too much of your time. So it was really nice talking to you guys, and it was fascinating entering into a conversation with Dóri about this, and check her out with Soulology, because they're absolutely amazing. And if you ever need language classes, you know who to get in touch with. So thank you guys, and I'll see you hopefully on the dance floor when all of this ends. And donate to Cape Town Swing, to their Swing into Action. That's in the comments in the Facebook group and the Instagram group. Muchas gracias. Thank you guys. It was really nice having you on this journey with us. And Dóri just sent me a little message that said thank you so much. So thanks, Muriel. I hope you did enjoy it, and it was a little bit of food for thought for everybody involved today. So see you guys next, and donate once again. Oh, and happy International Day. My boyfriend did this lovely drawing. Yeah, it's the sign is going to be the wrong way around, but it'll be the right way around for Facebook. So see you guys.